Welcome to the All Things Overlanding Podcast. Get ready to live, learn, and discover. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is actually kind of a special event. This is going to be the first podcast/vlog that I'm going to do. So this is going to be up on YouTube as well as on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, things like that. I'm going to be splitting the audio off into a podcast and then putting the video on YouTube. The reason for that is that way you can consume it wherever you want. You can watch it on YouTube. If you prefer to listen to a podcast on your way to work, you can listen to it there. So again, always trying to do whatever I can to make sure that I provide as valuable content as possible for you guys, and that it answers your questions and it can help you, get into overlanding or learn more about overlanding. Since it's kind of a passion of mine. So today, I'm a little old school. I wrote everything down in a notepad, just kind of have a point of reference. I've got a timer set over here for 20 minutes because I want to keep it to about 20 minutes or less. I know there are a lot of half-hour, hour-long podcasts, YouTube vlogs, things like that. To me, that's a little too long personally, just based on my schedule. A good 20 minutes is like a good, nice drive to work, I feel like, for me, and I feel like it might be that way for a lot of other people. So kind of wanted to keep the time down, but the quality of the content really high. So hope you agree, but if you haven't already subscribed to me, feel free to click the red subscribe button below on YouTube or click subscribe on the podcast channel. And, please hit like. Post comments. That's what I'm looking for. I really want you guys to tell me if I'm doing a good job, tell me if I'm not doing a great job, tell me if there's, things I could do better, if there's things you want to hear about, more of that sort of stuff than you're doing a crappy job, right? Like if you could just let me know, hey, I'd love to see more reviews of this, or I'd love to hear more about that. That's kind of what I'm looking for. So again, I'm going to start the timer here, and then I'm going to kind of hit on the main points that I want to make in the podcast/vlog, and we'll get going. So thanks again for joining and starting the timer now. Start. So the point of this podcast/vlog is to talk about gear tips. So one of the things that you're going to learn, the more that you watch YouTube videos, the more that you read about overlanding on, say, an Overland Bound, or, I have a website, allthingsoverlanding.com, if you want to go there and read some stuff about overlanding. The more you read about it, the more you're going to hear people talking about gear. Facebook groups too. Everybody talks about the gear. What kind of cooler do you use? What kind of rooftop tent do you like? What kind of, double burner stove do you have? That sort of stuff. So we're going to talk about gear a lot today. But before we jump into that, I wanted to go through just a quick definition of what is overlanding. So again, if you're completely new, you just have kind of heard of it and you're not sure what it is, I'm going to read you a definition. So basically, overlanding is defined as self-reliant overland travel to remote destinations where the journey is the principal goal. Typically, but not exclusively, it is accomplished with mechanized off-road capable transport where the principal form of lodging is camping, often lasting for extended lengths of time. So from that, we can extrapolate a couple things, one of which is the most important in my opinion. The journey is the principal goal. So, you think about trips you may have taken in the past. Like let's say for me to go to Florida to take my kids to Disney World, it's about a 14-hour drive. That 14-hour drive sucks. It's terrible, right? So you drive 14 hours and the drive is the worst part. You just can't wait to get there because then you're going to go to Disney World. You're going to hit the beach. The trip or the destination is actually your goal. And the trip is just a terrible thing you have to get through to get there. In overlanding, it's actually the opposite. And that's what I love about it. So in overlanding, sure, maybe you're going to go to, say I'm in Indiana, say I'm going to go to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and I'm going to go camping and all that stuff. That is exciting and I'm excited to get there. But on the way, I'm going to see a lot of cool stuff. I'm going to see, an abandoned Jeep up on the side of a hill. I'm going to see super cool old barns and old vehicles. I'm going to stop at awesome restaurants and have amazing food that I've never had before. I'm going to meet people. That's the cool thing about overlanding, is seeing people that are like-minded with their rigs driving by, waving at you on the road, seeing things you've never seen before, stopping and snapping some pictures or some video of a very cool natural, forest or something that's just super cool and catches your eye. So that's an important part of that definition. The second part is mechanized off-road travel. So a big thing of overlanding is your rig, right? And that's what everybody calls it. So your vehicle, your truck, your car, here's the thing. It doesn't matter what you drive. I mean, I have an '05 Nissan Xterra. It's lifted a little bit. It's got some bigger tires on it. It can go quite a few places. It's pretty capable. But honestly, you could take a Chevy Cruze or a Toyota Prius and go overlanding if you wanted to. I know a guy that overlands a Toyota Prius, and he loves it because he gets great gas mileage. It's comfortable. He's got a decent stereo in it. So you can take whatever you want, just whatever can get you there. And then the last part, camping. I mean, essentially what overlanding is it's kind of like fancy car camping, if you will. So those are some things to keep in mind. Hopefully that gives you a good idea of what overlanding is. So now that we've got that out of the way, I'd like to hit on the big 3 sections that I want to hit in this vlog/podcast. Section 1, and I'll put time stamps down below in the description so you can skip to them if you want to hit one or the other. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is what to focus on and what the essentials are just to get started in overlanding. So what do you need to think about? What do you need to consider? And what kind of gear do you need to get started? The second thing I'm going to talk about is, say that you go a couple times and you get really into it, like I have and like a lot of people have. What do you need to think about as you grow? So that's section 2. And then section 3 is just going to be some really quick hit, simple tricks for your first trip. So again, things that, I wish that I had known when I went on my first trip, the things that took me years of watching other people's overlanding videos and making multiple trips myself before I figured out what can I give you really quick that's going to give you the most value. So that's the third part. So again, my timer's running. I've got a little over 15 minutes, so we're doing okay, but I'm going to jump right into the first section. So what to focus on and what are the essentials? So if you think about overlanding and you think about it as essentially car camping, there are a few things you have to have, right? So you have to have some sort of lodging, whether that's a tent, whether it's a hammock, whether you're sleeping in your vehicle, whatever that looks like for you. So be thinking about that, right? So when I first started, and here's why I say this, gear is the topic here. I bought a hammock and I looked at a lot of hammocks and, Eno, for example, ENO, if you search for them, they make some great hammocks. I'm not saying anything bad about them, but they run $100 to $200-ish for a hammock. For me personally, I wanted to do hammock camping, but I wasn't 100% sure that I was going to be a permanent hammock camper. So I bought a Tribe is the brand hammock. And I'll put links to all the gear that I'm going to describe on the show today in the description. I bought a Tribe hammock. It was about $30. I still use it. It's been about 4 years. I probably use it on 10 or 12 different trips. It's super comfortable. I have no tears or rips or issues with the quality whatsoever. It's a great little hammock. But then from there, that one didn't have a bug net. I went camping in the summer. I got destroyed by bugs, so I bought a hammock with a bug net. Then eventually I was like, okay, well, this is all right, but it's kind of a pain sometimes to find trees the right distance apart. And, what if I'm somewhere where there aren't trees or I'm not in a spot where I can set up a hammock? So then I bought a tent, and I bought another tent, and now I'm kind of at the point where I have my favorite tent and I have a cot. And it's a great combination. Now I'm a cot/tent sleeper. But so you got to think about those kind of things as you're getting started out. So yes, there is some sort of lodging that you need as an essential, but think about, in the long term, what do you need to be doing? And we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about growth, but definitely need a tent or a hammock. Sleeping bag or bedding. So you could spend hundreds of dollars again on a fancy sleeping bag. I personally have a Coleman. It's about $40, 0 degree mummy style bag, and I love it. It's great. I'm not a huge fan of mummy style bags. I get a little claustrophobic, but the thing is warm. I've used it on multiple winter campouts, and when you throw a blanket or two in there with it, it's perfectly doable for a 0 degree campout. So be thinking about that too, sleeping bag, and what do you want to spend on it. Next, I would say cooler. Again, you're going to watch a lot of overlanding videos probably, and they're going to talk about fridge freezers that are permanent or on a sliding drawer system in the back of your car. Those are awesome. They're super cool. They're also super expensive. When you're thinking about a cooler, think about size. How much food are you going to take? Are you a beer drinker? Do you need room for drinks? How long do you need to hold ice? How long are your trips going to be? That sort of stuff. So a cooler is definitely the next sort of important essential you need to think about. After that, I would say folding chairs. So it sounds silly. You probably think, yeah, that's assumed, but I've made a trip or two where I forgot a folding chair and it was terrible. You have to sit on the ground or a log. It's not as comfortable. It's awful. So definitely be thinking about a chair. I personally have a Coleman one that folds out and has the little table that folds up next to it, and I love it. It's super sturdy. It's comfortable. It's nice and wide. It's not like those ones that, fold up and go into a bag that you kind of sit down in and it wraps up around you. It's more like a real chair, so it feels a lot more comfortable, but have some sort of something to sit on because you're going to be sitting around the campfire probably for a good amount of the night. Next, cooking equipment. And this can vary widely. So it all just kind of depends on how much you're into food, how much you want to bring with you, because this is going to affect your cooler, maybe fridge freezer ideas. It's going to affect how many pots and pans you need to bring, what kind of cooking equipment you need. Do you need a Tembo Tusk big, huge thing to cook with? Do you need a Coleman 2-burner? Do you need a single burner? Can you cook over a fire? Do you just need a knife to sharpen a stick and cook hot dogs on it? Are you going to bring Lunchables? There's a million ways you can do this, but you will need some sort of cooking equipment if you plan to cook. So that kind of hits on the essentials. Those are the big things that you definitely want to think about before you ever even get into overlanding from a gear standpoint. So second part of this podcast/vlog, things to think about as you grow. So again, you're getting into it, you're enjoying it. Again, I'm confident that you will really have a good time and you will start to get kind of obsessed with gear like I have. So like I mentioned with the hammocks and then the tents and then the cot, you can waste a lot of money and you can have things sitting around that you're never going to use again or that you're not going to use very often if you're not careful. So you need to think about each of these things that I'm going to go through here in a second from a lens of what will this be like in a year or two from now? What will this be like as I grow? So thing number one that I wanted to talk about was how often will you go on trips? And be honest with yourself. Like the first year that I did overlanding, I had just bought my truck and I was super excited about it. I'd watched a million YouTube videos and I was ready to go. And I told myself I'm going to go every weekend. And honestly, the first year I maybe went on 3 or 4 trips. I'm not kidding, like 3 or 4 trips. And I have kids and I have a wife and I can't piss her off all the time, and I can't just leave my kids all the time, and sometimes I can take them with me, but sometimes I can't. Work gets in the way, that kind of stuff. So realistically plan out how many trips you're going to take a year and then factor that in when you're buying gear. Another thing, how difficult is the terrain that you're going to be tackling? And the reason I bring this up is, 1, you want to make sure you have the right vehicle for it. And then 2, you have to have the right gear. If you're going into like super challenging, rocky, rutted out back roads, water crossings, things like that, you need to have recovery straps. You need to have D-ring shackles, maybe a winch. You need to have armor. There's all these things that you need to do to your vehicle, the equipment that you need to bring with you so that you're ready in case of the worst scenario. If a tree comes down in front of you, do you have a chainsaw or an axe, something that you could cut it up to get through? That sort of stuff. So definitely be thinking about the difficulty of the terrain. Another thing is, as you accumulate gear, you need to think about, do I have room for this in my house? And again, that sounds kind of funny, but when I started, I didn't have that much and it wasn't that big of a deal. I thought, I've got all this room, I'll be fine. And then I bought a couple hammocks and a couple tents and a couple coolers, and the things just start to pile up, and then you're like, crap, where am I going to put all this stuff, right? So definitely be thinking of your storage at home and how much room you've got for all this stuff that you're going to be buying. After that, the next thing you need to think about is, will all my gear fit in my vehicle? And that sounds kind of silly too, but I can tell you from personal experience that there have been a couple times where I will get all my stuff in a pile in my garage, and it'll be the day of, and I'm ready to go on my trip, and I go to start packing it up, and I'm doing the Tetris game in the back, and I'm trying to, figure out where everything's going to go, and it just doesn't fit. So then my kids are in the back and they're holding sleeping bags in their lap, and they've got a folding chair sticking up in between them, and my wife has a backpack on her lap, and it's not fun. So you definitely want to make sure that you're considerate of your vehicle and how much room you've got in there and how many people you're going to be taking with you before you start just throwing gear in it. So again, as you grow, think about whether you need smaller gear, or whether you need to buy stuff that is more almost like backpacking type gear that takes up less room, or if you've got room in your vehicle for bigger stuff. So then next, what do you want to eat? So again, as you grow, the first time I went, I brought hot dogs. Second time I went, I brought hot dogs. Third time I went, I'm like, I'm not going to keep cooking hot dogs, I'll branch out. I'll do ramen and maybe some mashed potatoes. I'll get a little crazy. So then I had to buy, new pots and pans so that I had more than just my one little folding, military surplus army pan that I had before. So then I bought that, and then you try and cook over a fire, and then you realize, man, it's really tough to get equal heat and boil water and do this over a fire. So I need a stove, and then it just grows from there. So again, think about your food needs and kind of where you want to go with it. Are you the type of person that just doesn't care and you're going to do hot dogs every time? Are you the type of person that's going to stop at a gas station on your way and just pick up a sandwich and eat that and not cook anything? Or are you the type that's going to want to bring ingredients and, all kinds of different food and like do fancier cooking, steak and potatoes and shrimp and pasta and that sort of stuff? Because that will, as you grow, obviously that will change the amount of gear you've got, the amount of expense you've got. So definitely be thinking about that stuff. The more you cook, the more gear you're going to need. Next, fridge versus cooler. We've touched on this a little bit, but so personally for me, the fridge freezer sounds awesome, right? But it's going to be one of those things that generally you're going to want to keep in the back of your vehicle all the time. You may want to build a drawer system around it. I have kids. I have to get mulch in the back of my truck. I have to throw sporting equipment in the back of my truck. So I can't have permanent fixtures back there. And the cost is kind of cost prohibitive. So for a fridge freezer, I think it's probably $600 to $1,500 pretty easily. So in my case, I just went with a cooler. My F40C4 TMP, I believe, cooler. I did a review of it. If you check out my YouTube channel, you'll be able to see the review there. It's one of my favorite coolers. It's a 20 quart, so it's a good size, but it's not huge like one of those full size 52 quarts or more big coolers. But it holds ice for about 5 days when it's fully packed up, and it's just a good size cooler. It's handy. It's got a bottle cap opener on it. It's got cup holders on the top so I can use it as a table. So be thinking about that kind of stuff too. And that I mentioned the sliding drawer system again, but again, think about the permanency of your vehicle and whether it's a main vehicle that you drive to work every day or if it's something that you can use just for overlanding. And then lastly, awnings. Every cool overlander has an awning on the side of their vehicle. It's kind of street cred. It shows that you're an overlander. I have one, so I'm making fun of myself here too. But they are super handy. But you could buy a used one for $100 to $150 off of someone on Craigslist, or you could buy a brand new one for $400 to $600. So again, think about spending your money wisely, read reviews, watch videos, like my channel and other overlanding channels out there to kind of see what people are using and what they've had good experiences with. I personally have a Tough Stuff awning that I bought used for $150. I've had it for probably over a year now. I've used it 5 or 6 times and it's perfect. I have no rips, no problems with it. It was used when I bought it. It's a sturdy little thing, and it's fantastic to have just to load and unload things from the truck under an awning so you're covered if it starts raining or anything like that. So kind of running low on time here, so I want to hit section 3, simple tricks for your first trip. So trick number one, to help make fitting your stuff in your rig easier, buy reusable containers that you can, measure the back of your vehicle, figure out what size containers will fit in there. And then, for instance, in my Xterra, I have these 3 Plano crates, and I'll link to them below in the description. But the 3 Plano crates will actually hold quite a bit of stuff, and I can fit all 3 of those all the way across the back of my Xterra, and then I can stack my chair and my cooler and my other stuff on top of it. And I know I just need everything besides my chair, my cooler, and my toilet, all that stuff has to go on top. I can get whatever I can get in those 3 bins. That's what I can take with me. So that helps me with my packing. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, make a packing checklist. You're going to forget stuff if you don't. I guarantee it. I use Google Docs for this, like a Google Sheet. The reason being, 1, it's free. 2, it just comes with my email. 3, it's duplicatable, so I can make one sort of master list. There's actually one on my website for a winter camp out that I did a few years ago that you're welcome to use as a starting template. But then you can just duplicate it out for the next trip and say, okay, well, yeah, on this one, I'm not going to cook a bunch of stuff, so drop these things off. And I'm going to take the tent instead of the hammock, so drop the hammock and move that up. And that way you don't forget anything. Tip 3, consider any possible challenges or obstacles and make sure you're prepared. So again, it's going to depend on the trip. If you're going to a state park and you're going to park in a parking lot and then carry your stuff to a site, you're probably going to want less stuff and you're going to want lighter stuff. If you're going on a super challenging, 3 to 5 day trip through the Trans-Wisconsin Adventure Trail. Now that one's not all that challenging, but say something in Kentucky or something like that that's more rocky with maybe some water crossings. Make sure you have recovery gear. Make sure you've got a chainsaw for down trees. Make sure, that sort of stuff. You just need to be cognizant of what your trip's going to be and make sure that you're ready for any possible challenges you might encounter. Tip 4, make sure that you have a first aid kit. This sounds funny. I actually was like the big, bad, tough guy the first trip that I took, and I refused to take one. Kid you not, that first trip, one of my kids cut his leg open, was bleeding all over the place. It wasn't serious. He was fine. Don't worry. But luckily, the Xterra actually has a built-in first aid kit in it, and I was like, oh, I've never really paid attention to this. Let me get it out. But it was a lifesaver. I was able to stop the bleeding, get some Band-Aids on it. He stopped crying. Everything was cool. It didn't ruin the trip. But more than that, if something serious did happen and you're out in the middle of nowhere, I mean, where I go, it's probably the place that I go most of the time is Hoosier National Forest. It's probably an hour and a half or two from my house. It's probably a half hour to 40 minutes from there to any real civilization, like even just houses and things like that from where I camp. So just better to be prepared than not. Tip 5, watch your battery usage. And when I say battery usage, I'm not really talking about your phone or anything like that. I'm talking about your car battery. It's always been a big fear of mine. I don't have a dual battery system. I don't have a generator or anything like that. And I often go camping by myself. But when you're unpacking everything, all the doors are open, all your lights are on. If you're charging a phone, if you're charging your kids' iPads, if you're running an inverter, I have an inverter built into my truck, and you're running accessories off of that. You've got big lights. You run all these things all day, and the truck's just been sitting there for 6, 7, 8 hours, and you're running down the battery. Be very cognizant of that, because that way you don't have to worry about a 10-mile trek out of the woods by foot to try and get to some place because your phone's dead and your car's dead. So be cognizant of that. And the final tip here, as I run out of time, is let your family know where you're going. And again, I know that sounds silly and it seems common sense, but again, first couple trips, I was a tough guy, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm going in the woods, and I'll be back tomorrow. But again, same situation as what I just mentioned. If your battery dies, if you get stuck somewhere, something happens, if you haven't told anyone where you're going, it's going to be a lot harder to find someone. If you don't have reception out there, it's going to be tough to get out of those woods. If someone knows and you don't show up on time, at least they're coming to look for you. Now I'm out of time. At least they're coming to look for you instead of you having to hike all the way out. So again, just last tip there. So that's my time. Again, I want to keep it to 20 minutes. I want to give you as much value as I possibly can in the podcast and the vlog. And I don't want to take up a ton of your time. So I hope that was helpful. If so, please, feel free to give me a like. I'd love it if you drop a comment, even if it's great job, or you suck, or here's something I'd love to hear about, or can you review this piece of gear? Anything like that. All the comments help. They give me a good idea of what I need to do. And please subscribe, and my goal is to continue to generate this content and make it better and better and better. So I enjoy it, but at the same time, I want you guys to enjoy it, and I want you to get value out of it. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks for checking out the YouTube video. Down in the description, there'll be links to all my channels where I'm at. So engage however you want, wherever it's valuable for you. And my motto has always been live, learn, discover. So, get out there, take some trips, see what you can do. Don't feel like you have to spend $1 million to get started. Just go do it. And then you'll figure out what kind of stuff you need. So again, my name's Fletch, All Things Overlanding. Thanks again for stopping by, and have a great day.